Welcome to the Casual Author Podcast. I'm Dan, sci-fi and fantasy author. Like you, I've got a lot on my plate. What with many children, a full-time job, a homestead, and loads of other responsibilities. I'm here to bring you inspiration, positivity, and community around having a busy life and still wanting to chase that author dream, even if you have to take a casual approach. For more information about the podcast, me, or my books, head to thecasualauthor.com. Let's get started. Hey there, it's Dan Kenner with episode number 142 of the podcast. Today is Friday, November 15th, 2024, as I record this. And today we're talking to Elena Carter about making your author dream a reality. We talk about how a little bit later in life for her, she started writing even with an infant of just a few months old, how she used her phone and various little bits of time throughout the day to write, and how that flourished and has become something that is part of her daily life and her process. We talk about the challenges of writing as a parent and the different methodologies and tasks and ideas you can implement to make it happen when it comes to writing. So it's a great conversation. She's very inspirational. I love hearing about her story, about where she is today, and just learning about her process as a parent and as an author. So I think you want to stick around for that conversation. You're really going to enjoy that. So feels like just yesterday that I recorded the introduction to the last podcast episode. This new schedule is it's more, I guess, beneficial to myself as the podcast host. It just makes more sense for me, and I hope that publishing on Monday isn't a big issue for you. But wherever you're listening, please let me know. Comment on YouTube or on the comments in Spotify, wherever you like to listen, where you're listening from, what you like about the podcast, and any feedback you might have. I definitely want to hear from you to get to know who my listeners are, and feel free to share and add reviews if you like it or dislike it. I just want to hear your thoughts about the podcast. Definitely, I've reflected a lot about the podcast over the past few months, really. Because if you've ever done a podcast, you know that it takes a lot of time. So there's so many things that go into scheduling the interview, sourcing the interviews. Of course, people request to be on the podcast often, which is amazing. I love when people do. Curating the conversations, and then there's actual recording, and then the editing, and then the description and tags and all sorts of stuff to try to reach the right audience. So as I was reflecting on all the things, I was trying to decide, hey, is this still the right thing to do? I love doing the podcast. I love having conversations with people, but it really comes down to, is this the type of system I can sustain over time? And, this is a good thing every once in a while. If you're an author, you're doing anything, writing, editing, publishing, podcasts, social media, everything usually comes to a point where you question it. You say, is this the right thing for me? Am I doing the right thing? And I keep coming back to the podcast conversation with my current circumstances of my life. And after recording a few more episodes, I try to get a little bit ahead, and people just commending me on providing a platform, a place where a positive perspective can be had and discussed around being a busy author, around having responsibilities and still managing to write books and publish them, even if it's a little bit slower than you expect. And I've just had so many people say it's been encouraging to listen to the podcast. That, coupled with this draw I have to create a community of my own and have relationships with like-minded people, other parents, other people who have adult responsibilities and find themselves busy but still want to write, whoever you are, whatever your circumstances. And I can't let it go. It's just, there's something to be said about those one-on-one conversations. I genuinely love to talk to people. I love to get to know people. It's my favorite thing to learn from people. I know I'm a very isolated person in terms of geographic location, and I stay home all the time, working from home and homeschooling and homesteading and all these things. There's lots of homes in there, I just realized. Uh, but this community, this podcast is so instrumental to me. And sharing these conversations, I want to benefit other people. So I am going to keep doing it, even though it consumes a lot of time. You may find that sometimes my introductions may feel a little bit rushed, or they may not feel as impactful or thoughtful, and I will apologize for those times. Sometimes I'm just going off the cuff. I just think I need to record. I've got 30 minutes right before I dive into my exercise routine, or I have to go make dinner or lunch for the kids. So I'll record in this 30 minutes and go from there. And if it feels a little scrappy, why. I can't always write notes for the things I want to say, but just know that the reason I do it is for you and for this community. So I apologize for if something feels a little scrappy, but at the same time, I'm not apologizing because that's just the reality of my life. So there's that. That's just a little bit of a heartfelt. I'm going to keep doing this, at least for the near future. We'll see in a few months if I come into a crisis again and have to decide that. But at the end of the day, I hope you enjoy it and I hope you share with people. More than anything, I hope you smile as you listen to the conversations and that you learn things. 'Cause I know I learn something every single time. So there's that. So in terms of updates, it's funny. I feel like winter updates are the most boring homestead updates I could possibly ever have. That's because there's not a lot of updates. It's getting cold. We don't have snow yet. We have a little bit of snow, but it's barely snow. It's a light dusting. It's really just in maintenance realm, and I'm grateful for it because I was feeling a teeny bit burned out from the homestead. Not in a negative. I'm definitely saying it was horrible. You just get a little tired, right? Working early morning into all throughout the day and into the night on any free time possible to in the homestead it's tricky, right? The only time I really write in homestead or write and work on the author stuff is early morning. But it'll be nice to take a step back and see if I can get a little head on writing and editing or cover design or all these things that keep getting put a little bit back because of the homestead. It really just my author becomes maintenance during the summer, and then the homestead becomes maintenance in the winter. So the flip flop will be kind of nice. The biggest update is that my wife has gotten a little bit irritated with one of the goats. We have four goats today. We've got our buck, who's named Toulouse. He's stinky. And overall nice, but you don't want him to get too nice and sidle up to you. And then his friend Merrick, yes, named after one of the characters in my book. He is the weather, so he's been castrated. He's just a friend of Toulouse. But then we have two does that we bred last year. One's named Rivelin, and the other one is named Adele. Adele, she was one of the first goats we ever had. She was actually the first litter or whatever you say, kidding time of when we bred our first goats, and she's been amazing. We've loved her. Well, Rivelin is the other one. She's the other doe, also named after a book character. If you've read the Lightbearer Chronicles, you know the name Rivelin. But Rivelin is a nuisance. She is she's sweet in her own way. You know, she's kind. She doesn't bite us. She's not too much trouble, other than she's really skittish. And for some reason, when it is time for her, when she's in heat, is what they call their cycle, when she's ready to be bred, she is loud. And I'm talking like loud. She will scream and scream and scream and scream for days on end. And, honestly, it doesn't bother me. It's goat sounds. We live in a rural area where all you hear is cows and dogs barking and roosters crowing. Like it's common sense. But for some reason, the particular frequency of her screaming drives my wife up the wall. She just does not like it. So we were not planning on breeding her this go around because her milk supply is a little bit lower than we like. She doesn't really give us that much milk. At least she hasn't in past years. But my wife was like, I can't listen to her scream anymore. So just put her with the buck. So they stopped yelling at each other. I was like, okay, but that means she's gonna have babies. She's like, I don't care. We'll solve that problem later. We'll sell the babies. We'll milk her. We'll do what we have to. So she got bred this past few days, and it's kind of one of those. We'll figure it out later, and I'm sure we will. Either we'll sell her with being pregnant, so it'll be like an incentive for someone to buy a goat that's going to kid in 4 months, or we'll let her have her kids, and we'll have more little baby goats around. So, I mean, worst case, there's not really a worst case in any of these. It's going to turn out fine either way. But she did stop screaming, right? Because what happens is she's screaming to the buck and he's screaming to her, and they really want to get together, but they're across her property. So anyway, they're all quiet now. All four goats are just happy. Adele is in there with him because we want her to be bred. She hasn't been quite yet, but I'm sure it'll happen at some point. But yeah, that's that. There's the goat drama, something you probably don't think about on the daily. There's the goat drama. That's, I think, the most exciting thing that's been happening, other than I'm so proud and happy to say that we finally optimized the watering situation on our property. Last year, I just carried lots of hot buckets of water from the house to where the animals are, which it's not like, it's probably about 500 feet or more. So it's not like a significant distance, but when you're carrying 5-gallon buckets of water back and forth, it gets a little tiring, particularly trudging through the snow. So this year, we made sure to get heaters for everything. So these heaters are pretty cool. You just put them either heated buckets or you drop them inside this, you submerge them in this big trough of water, and they don't heat up to the point where things boil or it gets hot. They just keep it above the freezing temperature. They've got these like thermostats in them. And when the water starts to dip below into freezing temperature, they just heat up and keep it right above. So the water's still cold, but it doesn't freeze. And can I tell you, it's so nice not having to deal with thick ice frozen buckets, breaking them out and melting them in hot water and then carrying out new buckets. It was just a pain last year. So feeling pretty good about this year. Hopefully the watering situation won't be wild. I do still have to carry some buckets, but it's just from the hydrant, the freeze-free hydrant outside to where they are. It's, about 50, 100 feet. It's not too bad. Plus, I could use the exercise. Everybody knows that, right? But yeah, I think I'm just looking forward to this winter. It's not going to be so bad. And with Ginger's new house completed, hopefully she's comfy and we can make it to spring and then we can reassess, see if there's anything we need to do for next winter. But yeah, in terms of authoring, frankly, this week has been a little bit tricky. We've had a lot of late nights, a lot of things coming up with our family and events and everything. So I have not been able to get up as early as I hoped. I still made progress. I've written probably 5,000 words on my work in progress over the week, which slower than usual, but I've made some progress. I'm really happy with where I'm going with this story. And I've thought a lot about what I want to do with my writing. Hopefully, I can get these hidden heritage books. There's 6 books in this YA series out as quickly as possible. And then I need to address this 4-book epic fantasy series that I'm writing. So I've really been trying to lean into reading more classic books like the Lord of the Rings books, like Anne of Green Gables, right? Some of these really lengthy. I'm reading The Magician Apprentice right now, which is by Raymond Feist, and just trying to understand the timbre of the stories and the writing style and the word usage and everything. Obviously, I'm not imitating anybody, but just trying to capture this old fantasy style writing because those are the books I grew up on. Those are the books I loved. I haven't historically written books like that, but I would love to write books like that. So just trying to brush up on those, read those, and consume it as much as possible, and just love the experience of reading them. So the other thing I will say is I've taken a deep dive into Facebook ads once again. I've talked about this briefly, but I'm really motivated to share Dragon Blooded and Lightbearer Chronicles, these books that I've written with people, and social media is just not doing it for me. Part of it is me, right? I'm not doing social media, so therefore, how can social media work for me? But I'm really hoping to employ Facebook ads to see if I can reach the right readers, doing some experiments, which should be interesting, adjusting graphics and language, doing some click testing. It's a very long process, but it's nice to feel like I'm doing something, right? These amazing books that I've written aren't just sitting there staring at a wall because heaven knows Amazon isn't going to show them for me, right? I got to do some marketing and get them before people. So it'll be fun to see who we can reach and delight with my stories. But once I have more updates about that, I'll let you know. I don't think I'll have updates for probably months. It takes a long time to really figure out what ads work. But all right, I believe that's everything in terms of updates and on the homestead and authoring. So, as an extra reminder, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/the casual author. No pressure, obviously, for a couple dollar months. I'd appreciate your support, but I will continue to provide this content and these shows for you because I just have a blast in doing them. If you have any feedback for me or you'd like to apply to the show, just head to thecasualauthor.com. And as a reminder, you can sign up to be a part of the email list where I send updates and advice that I've learned from other people, as well as I'll provide some information about the show as part of that. Eventually, I will have kind of a little freebie that I'll send with it. But yeah, just head to thecasualauthor.com and sign up for the email list if you want updates. So we can go ahead and shift over to the interview portion with Elena. Hey, Elena, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks so
You,
much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I think you're the first person I've talked to in Bulgaria. That's where you're located, correct?
Exactly. I wouldn't
Very,
be
very
surprised
cool.
if I was the first person.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know that I've met a lot of people in Bulgaria, but I've heard the area is very beautiful. You said you were born and raised there, is that right?
No, I was actually born and raised in Kazakhstan.
Oh, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so what brought you to Bulgaria then?
And I moved to Bulgaria about 11 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm from Kazakhstan originally. I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian.
Hmm.
Born and raised in Kazakhstan, and now I live in Bulgaria and I write books in English. And how how more complicated could it get, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of other languages you could write in, I'm sure, but I'm curious to know, how long have you been writing and publishing?
Well, I started actually writing, like seriously writing, about 4 years ago.
Okay.
I've always wanted to write. I started here and there little bits, maybe like a story somewhere, like a blog article, but I don't know, guess never had the courage. until 2020, actually. My youngest was like 4 or 5 months old, and it was the beginning of COVID. So the
Hmm.
fun times. Yeah, and then I had this idea for a story, and I had a lot of encouragement from my husband, who is a writer. He's a screenwriter,
Oh,
and he kept
cool.
telling me, "You need to give it a try," because he knew it was a dream of mine, and he was like, "You need to give it a try." But I was really unsure of myself, and I was like, "Nah, I don't know. I'm not sure." And I said, "Anyway, if I do give it a try, it's not going to be in English anyway, right? It's my second language. I'm going to write in Russian." And he was like, "Yeah, okay, well, okay, if you do, but that would be a shame because I'd like to read it." And I was like, "Then okay, maybe I should give it a try." And yeah, I just started writing in I think it was March 2020, and I started publishing my chapters on Wattpad.
Okay.
Back then, yeah, I discovered Wattpad, and that was my first publishing experience. And after 2 or 3 months, I decided to pull from there and to just continue writing the book and then self-publish it,
That
which I
is
ended up.
so cool. Okay, I have so many questions about this idea. You went, not only did you go out on a limb to try to write something, even though you were, doubting, maybe you're worried about it, but you're writing in not your native language, which is how difficult is that? What's it like, the process writing in your second language?
It's changing. It's ever changing, to be
Hmm.
honest. Since that time, since the beginning of 2020, I've been reading a lot in English. I mean, I've
Hmm.
always read a lot, but when I decided to write, I decided that I now need to switch to reading in English too, which makes a huge difference. And my husband is English, so there's a
Okay.
lot of
Oh,
English
that makes sense.
speaking.
I guess I should have assumed when he said, I want to read your book. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Great.
My youngest son is actually English speaking because, well,
Okay.
he's supposed to be bilingual, but we've kind of like switched to one language to make it easier for him. So I'd say English is pretty much prevailing here. Well, definitely in this household, in my life mostly. I speak some Russian, I speak some Bulgarian outside of the house, but yeah, it's mostly English. And by now, I think in English, I write in English, I read in English. I do obviously Google things that I'm not sure about, but you know what? I Google them in Russian too, and I think actually everybody does that, to be
I, I,
honest.
I do. I do all the time. So,
Right?
no,
Yeah.
I get that. So how did you do it? I mean, you started writing when you had an infant. You said he or she, I guess I'm not unsure. Your youngest, they were 4 months old, you said? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was about 4 or 5 months old, and I just it's actually easier when they're like infants. It's
That's
actually
fair.
they sleep, they
That's
sleep.
true.
Then when they start running around and they don't sleep that much anymore, right? And then you have to kind of like chase them around the house. Yeah, he was I think about 5 months old, and I started writing on my phone. I actually was writing on most of my first book was actually typed on my phone, and
Wow.
I actually have a very small phone. I'm not a fan of those, the huge ones.
The blocks.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you're typing with one hand, when you're lying in bed late at night and your baby's
Hmm.
asleep on your shoulder, you want to be holding something that actually fits in the palm of your hand. Yeah. So yeah, I was typing mostly on my phone. And when I had a chance to get to my laptop, I'd probably maybe add a little bit like half a chapter or something. But mostly it was on my phone, and I used Google Docs. It's super convenient because then when I get to the laptop, I have access to the same file, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, that's it's actually very doable, Okay, now I have the luxury of actually using my both hands to type, and I mostly type on my laptop. So yeah, of course, there's a great, huge difference. Yeah, now I'm more accustomed to that. But yeah, I did a lot. I did a lot, and especially towards the end of the year, because I started in March. I finished my first draft in the beginning of December. I remember I used to say it was exactly 9 months. I said it was my book
Mm.
baby. It took me exactly 9 months
Yep.
write the first draft. But the most of it, I think, I got like really active in writing around maybe September to November, around that time. And I was writing every day as much as I could. and I had a little calendar where I would mark the word count because
Oh, cool.
it's very motivating. It's very encouraging when you see that you haven't missed a day, even if it's 100 words. Doesn't matter. Even if it's a sentence. Yeah. Well, I try to like not go below 100, 200 words, and some days it would be 1,000 or a couple thousand, on the good days. Yeah, but it's really that is a great tool that I would recommend to anyone. Just write it down because you're gonna feel motivated, you're gonna feel proud of yourself, and you're gonna feel like, look, I'm actually doing it, I've got this. And I also had a writing buddy, and we were like holding each other accountable. That helped a great deal also because every day we would text each other and we'd say like,
Oh,
so
cool.
what did you do today? Yeah. And kind of, exchange the word counts. So yeah, most of it was written on my phone, and then I just from that point on, I got into edits, several months of edits, self-edits, then professional edits, and then I released it the following year.
I mean, that's pretty fast. Some people take years and years to write a book. You, a young mother, you wrote and published a book, what you said about a year, year and a half ish. Is that
Yeah,
that's
because I
amazing.
started in March, and then next year in July I released it.
So cool.
It was yeah, a year.
So, I mean, you're an inspiration to other mothers or parents who have young children, might be feeling, oh, I don't have any time to write. You made time while tending to or holding a sleeping baby, and you used your phone. How did you keep your imagination alive despite, I know what it's like being a parent. It's exhausting having a new baby. They may wake you up at night. You've got throughout the day, you're just kind of tired and you're maybe overwhelmed. How did you keep your imagination alive during the writing, while you were writing on your phone?
I think, you know what? I think what happened was that I have seriously been dreaming of writing my whole life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally started at the age of 40, and I love to tell everyone that please don't ever say that it's too late. It's never too late. Yeah. I started when I was 40. I started writing, and I don't regret anything. I don't regret that I came to writing at that age because maybe I had to be, that exact version of me. Maybe I had to go through
True,
certain life experiences. Maybe, everything happens for a reason. There's
true.
so maybe it was just meant to be. So to start writing at the later age. But what I'm trying to say is that when I started, I realized that I think it was my calling. I felt so, it just felt right.
Mm,
When you feel like I am doing what I was meant to be doing, I am doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it makes me happy. And when you're truly passionate about something and you love it so much, yeah. Of course, I didn't have like writer's block. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of self-doubt. There's imposter syndrome.
hmm.
And me, I'm a chronic perfectionist, and
Okay,
I have a lot of hang-ups about like English is not my first language, and like, how dare I go and write and publish books and things like that. So yeah, I tend to be very hard on myself. Yeah. But through all that, when I write, I'm happy. I'm where I am supposed to be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that is never ending inspiration, and then when you're in that state, when you're in the flow, then the story just flows. It just writes itself. I mean, I'm actually a pantser. Yeah, I didn't have a detailed outline. I had a very rough outline of, I know who my character is. I know that like this is the idea. These are the things that like more or less are going to be happening to her. Yeah. But what exactly is going to be happening? Any twists and turns, any side characters, that was all coming as I was writing.
hmm.
Yeah. My favorite side character, who is actually the main character of the second book, yeah, she just appeared out of no, like I'm writing, and then this sweet old lady, sits next to my main character in the cafe, and I'm like, oh, you're cool. Who are you? And then, and they start chatting, and I'm just starting to fall in love with my own character, and I'm like, oh, she's cool. And as I go deeper into the story, I realize that the story that was supposed to be a standalone, I did not plan to write a series. Yeah, that was supposed to be a standalone, and I was like, no, I think there's gonna be a book two coming because now Alice, the side character, she needs her story. it's like I feel that she needs her story told. And yeah, so the inspiration and imagination, I guess they're just always there.
Hmm.
Oh no, always working. 100% of the time. And also this trilogy, The Dreamtamer Chronicles, it's about dreams. It's about traveling to different worlds through your dreams. Yeah, and that's a topic that I always found fascinating. Dreams, and I've always had very, very weird and wonderful dreams, since I was a kid. And some of those dreams actually made it into my book as the dreams of my characters. So yeah, sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night with an image, with an idea, and then I just grab my phone again, and just type it quickly in the notes, and then it would turn into a scene or like a chapter. You know.
That's very good. No, I love that. First of all, I'm a pantser as well, so I totally understand that. The way you described writing your book, I write very similarly, and I know that very exciting. You just get like this warm, comfortable feeling like, yeah, I am in the right place in the right time. Like I'm meant to be writing this, and then all of the doubts come later, right? When you're not done writing it in the editing phase. But no, I agree. I think there's something to be said about allowing your imagination, your inspiration to manifest itself. Like you explained it, it's almost like natural, right? Since you've always loved stories, you've always loved reading, you've always wanted to write. It just is emerging from you. But I think you also have to give it some space, right? Some people block their minds with, ideals or doubts or other things, and they kind of get in the way of themselves with writing. So it doesn't sound like you have an issue with that, do you?
Doubts mostly. I think that's the,
Yeah.
the self-doubts, that's the
Yes.
main enemy, definitely. And, as I mentioned that I'm a perfectionist, I'm really working on that. Yeah, I still have that I'm gonna get the sentence right kind of thing. Although everybody's like, don't edit as you write, just write. Yeah, write the first draft. I don't over edit, but my first drafts are pretty clean.
Oh,
It's not
that's
really a
good.
mess. I'm just I will double check that word. I will think about it, but I also try to keep the balance, and stop myself from overthinking that too much. Because when that doubt kicks in, or what does the reader expect from me? Yeah, like what am I supposed to produce? Yeah, or am I good enough to produce that? What the audience expects from me, then you got a problem. Yeah, when those questions about being good enough or about what you're supposed to do, when they come in your head, then the inspiration actually stops flowing. Because
Hmm.
if there is a story that you want to tell, you tell it. You tell your story. You tell it in your voice. You tell it in your words. Yeah, you can work with it later, but you need to tell it. And when you feel comfortable doing that, then there will be no writer's block. Then there will be no obstacles. You'll just write. You write what you feel. You write what comes in your mind.
Hmm.
Yeah, but definitely, of course, I've had the latest actually instances were I was working on a collection of short stories. Now that I've released my trilogy, my latest project was a collection of short stories. And I actually started it after I finished my first book. While it was with the editor, I'm like, I can't stop, I have to be writing something. So I had this idea about a collection of fantasy short stories. Yeah, they're all different. Yeah, the only thing that they have in common is that they're happening in the same place, and I call it
Okay.
the town. And the collection is called The Town. Yeah, so this is kind of like fantasy slash magical realism, I would say.
Mm.
Yes, some weird, wonderful, magical, paranormal, interesting, extraordinary things happening to people in this particular fictional town. Yeah. So I started doing that, and then I wrote book two. So I was too busy writing book two. Then I went back to the collection, and then there was book three. And so it was, a stop and start kind of thing. And when I finally got to it, I actually felt that a little bit that I kind of lost the flow. And I
Mm.
noticed that I can write like one short story, I finish it, but then life gets in the way and I take a break, of like, I don't know, a week or two. And I find it hard to get back into it.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, I don't know. So what's the next story gonna be like? And is it a good idea? And all those, all those little doubts, they start creeping in when you are not in that constant flow of writing. That's also why I'm saying that I think it's very good to write not as in you must write every day and like this minimum. No, no, just allow some time in your headspace
Hmm.
for writing, whichever it is in your idea, or like maybe it can be just daydreaming. It can be like writing down maybe a scene or description of a character. I have a million notes with like a random description of, oh, I just thought of a character who has that kind of a tattoo on his face. Random, absolutely. I don't know if it's ever gonna come in my stories, right? But if I think if consistently you spend some time in your writing headquarters here,
Hmm.
let's say,
Hmm.
in your writing headspace, then the inspiration is it's like a candle. It's always burning, It can
Hmm.
flicker a little bit, but it's always there. That light is always there,
Yeah.
Just don't blow it out completely.
Well, no, I love that. I love this perspective, this idea of a candle, because I agree. I have never personally really had any writer's block in the sense that, the way people describe writer's block as they don't know where to write next or they feel stuck with a piece. And I agree with you because I think, writing is like anything. It's like a muscle that you can exercise. It's you're training your brain, you're training your body to get into a specific creative place. And if you've done it enough times, like I'll be honest, sometimes I wake up at 5 a.m. to write and I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't think I can write. Like there's no way I'm gonna write. And I just do it. I'm just like, all right, let's sit down at the page, put my hands on the keyboard, and I just start writing. Now, the first few sentences are a little bit weird, right? They may not come off perfect, but once I start, it's like my brain's like, oh, here we are. We're writing. Let's do it. And I just move forward. And I think writer's block, a lot of people what they're experiencing is writer stop, right? They're stopping themselves because they don't know, they're afraid to initiate that writing mentality. So it's great to hear from someone else like you who has experienced that as well. Just like the inspiration's is always there, right? That candle's always burning. You're just drawing on it when you need it. You've gotten into the habit of doing it on a regular basis daily, I think is preferable, but and that works for you. So and then a book is done all of a sudden, right? You're just
Exactly.
writing and all of a sudden it's done. So I just think that's amazing. And now that you've published a full trilogy, are you excited about writing more trilogies? What's kind of the future of Elena Carter's books? I know you mentioned your short stories and poem anthologies.
Yeah, I have so many little projects
Hmm.
all over the place, really. Like I really want to release the town, this
Yep.
collection of short stories. I feel guilty. I'm like, it needs to be finished. It needs to be, I finished it. I finished the first draft, by the way.
Okay.
That
Good.
another huge accomplishment that I constantly keep forgetting. I think because it's hard with the short stories, because
Yep.
it's not like you don't have the end as
Hmm.
you have to one big story in a novel. I was writing, and I was like, putting them together and into one file. And then at some point I was like, okay, I have 50,000 words. I have 15 short stories. I think that's actually pretty good for a collection,
Agreed.
you know?
Yeah.
Because again, there isn't like a requirement for the word count or anything like that, right? Because it's
Mm-mm.
a collection of short stories. Yeah. Basically, you do whatever you want. But I felt like, okay, I think 15 is my favorite number. Yeah. 50K sounds great. I'm like, I think I have to stop it here now, because even if more stories come in the future, they will, because I love the concept, I love the town, and I love this format of short stories. If even if they come, what I can do a volume two, a volume three.
Yeah.
Right at
Absolutely.
any time, so it's not a problem. But I really need to finalize this project, and I need to release it, and then I think I will feel like, "Ooh, okay, now I can move on. Now I can move on to something big, something bigger. I do miss writing a novel. Honestly, I
Mm.
miss when you're working on something big, on this. Short stories are wonderful because you get to tell a story without spending like 9 months on it. Yeah. And then
Yes.
you get this gratification. You get the feeling of accomplishment. Yeah. It's like,
Yes.
wow, yeah. This little the end, but you got this. Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's 5,000 words, but you got this. Yeah. you finished it.
Hmm.
But I do miss something big, and I have a couple of ideas of new novels. I haven't even decided if there's going to be a standalone or series, but they're really like in the very, very early stages. I can't even decide like where, what I want to focus on first, because I even had a sci-fi idea in
Oh.
mind. That is not my genre at all. So I'm really not sure if I want to go there. But I had a cool idea in mind. And I had another fantasy novel. But that again emerged from a short story, because I wrote a short story and it kind of ended like sort of a cliffhanger. Yeah. And
Hmm.
then I was like, actually, I like the characters. And it would be actually cool to continue, telling their story, but of their adventures. And so I'm really considering that. Probably I will make that into my next big project. But first, like the short stories. Like as soon as I release my poetry collection at the end of this month, then I'm going into the edits. I'm going to finally polish the short stories and then send them off to the editor. And hopefully next year, I don't know, maybe in spring somewhere I can release it, and then I can focus on something else. And well, and as you know, the marketing, the post writing
Mm.
part takes way more time than actually the writing part, right? Because then you have all the publishing, all the marketing, all the promotion, all the social media on
Hmm.
5, 6 platforms.
I
So
know
yeah.
all of the troubles. Yes, absolutely. I will say before we talk, I want to talk a little bit about the marketing and your decisions around that. I will say I have learned that short stories are a good way to get that quick win, like you said. Because sometimes when you're working on a really long novel, it can feel like long and arduous, like, oh, am I going to actually finish this story? But there's something nice about writing the end. Like, oh, I just read a 5,000 word short story. Okay, I got that. Like completion, satisfaction. I'm going to keep working on my long novel. So I like to go back and forth. I'll write a novel, I'll take a little break in the middle of the novel, write a quick short story, and I'm like, yeah, I feel accomplished, and I'll go back to the novel. So that's generally how I've done it. But I know people might not feel satisfied by the same thing.
I think
But
that's actually a great approach, especially for those writers who are struggling with the writer's block when they're
yeah.
stuck on something in their, for example, in the novel that they're working on at the moment. Take a step back. Don't
Hmm.
quit writing altogether. Take a step back and
Right.
pick up something else and write a flash fiction,
Hmm.
write a short story, write something else. Yeah, and like reset, recharge your mind basically. And then it will be much easier to go back. And maybe a new solution would be even found for the particular scene that you're stuck on, right?
That's true. Yeah, you may unlock some information about the story by writing something else. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Just stopping writing, I think you should write something, even if it's some random story. Just keep the creativity going. But I want to talk about marketing because you've written your books in English. You live in Bulgaria, but your market isn't near you, right? I'm sure there are some people in Bulgaria that read English books, right? There's some market for it, I'm sure, but you're reaching across the ocean and
Yeah.
country lines to reach people. So what does that look like? Is it primarily social media? Where are you focusing your energy around marketing?
Social media. Yeah. My marketing is non-existent.
No.
My marketing
Okay.
is really terrible. No, seriously. I have not mastered Amazon ads, even though
Okay.
I've tried. I tried. I've read books. I've done those the courses that those
Hmm.
challenge. I've done those. I do promise myself that I will actually one day sit down and actually learn properly how to do that thing, because I know that thing can work. Yeah, and it does work for other authors, but I find them absolutely intimidating.
Hmm.
Seriously, it's not even just about the money. Yeah, it requires money. Yeah, I don't have like a huge marketing budget or anything. Yeah. But it's intimidating because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And if I hear the word keywords, once again, I'm gonna have a
Keywords and
meltdown.
categories. Yeah.
That's just so yeah, that doesn't really work for me. And all the physical, all the no, like book events or anything like
Hmm.
in person, that is just out of the question for me. So it only leaves me with social media,
Hmm.
which we know, especially recently, is a very, very, very hard place to navigate. I
Just
mean,
for
I think
context
I
for
have.
listeners, this is landing on the election week in the United States. Well, it's just post-election, so we don't have to speak more about it, but there's a lot going on. Let's just say that on social media.
I've tried. I mean, I think I have pretty much well, most platforms of social media. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, Twitter. I still call it Twitter.
Oh, so do I. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm where else am I? Oh, Facebook, maybe a little bit less because those Facebook author pages, I find them pretty much useless. Again, me. I've
Sure.
seen really
Yeah.
successful authors doing that, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't mastered that magic, so
Hmm.
I'm not doing that yet. I had a podcast. I started a podcast last year.
Nice.
I abandoned it. I hope to be back actually at some point because I did enjoy it, but it's just too much. Everything is too much because I started a
Sure.
podcast and then a little bit later on, I decided to start YouTube because to me, that was basically I was challenging myself. Because it was a huge step out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I'm afraid of speaking on camera. I'm gonna go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be absolutely terrified of speaking, of showing my face in camera, of like author interviews like this. Yeah, I mean, I can still get nervous, but at least I'm not. Most of my interviews, the first interviews that I had, I never rewatched them,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. My husband would watch it, and he's like,
Right.
"Oh, like you said." I'm like, I'm not watching that. I don't want to watch.
I get that. Yeah.
I'm just being brutally honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I decided to start YouTube also. Yeah. And these are several platforms with completely different
Mm.
algorithms, completely different algorithms. And since I am just an ordinary human being and not a superhero, like
Don't point at me. I'm not a superhero.
I I can't create 100% original content for each platform. Yeah.
Right.
So I do a lot of cross posting. Yeah. So I record a short video.
Hmm.
Yes. If you follow me across all platforms, sorry, but yeah, you're gonna see the
Yeah.
same poem, the same friendly reminder, the same whatever video on all of them. And guess what? The engagement, the reach, the view, it is so different.
Mm-hmm.
That at least helped me to understand that it's not about me and it's not about my content. It's about the algorithm,
Yeah.
because when you feel sometimes that like you're screaming into the void or you're climbing Mount Everest and you're never gonna get there and nobody wants to like to hear what you're saying, like, no. Try to make a video, for example, try to post it across several different platforms. You'll just see that somewhere it just takes off and somewhere it has zero views and somewhere like it is just so different. And it's just all trial and error. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't think that social media works very well for selling books, not in my case, at least. It does work for building connections, and I have
Yeah.
found some absolutely amazing people on all the platforms. Like if a lot of people are saying about how negative Twitter can be. I have found the most amazing, supportive writing
Yeah.
communities where I've made so many friends. I've met so many amazing people. And some of them read my books, some of them didn't, and they won't, and because it's like it's not their cup of tea, and it's absolutely okay. But we can talk about other things, we can talk about the writing related stuff, and yeah, it's like you need to do social media. Don't expect don't expect too much, I guess, on the marketing side of things. But it's still a good thing to do,
Yeah.
You
Well, I
can you
agree.
can get a
Yeah.
lot out of it.
I don't like it.
Inspiration, encouragement, so many talented people out there, so many amazing talented people out there. Sometimes when I'm just like if I'm feeling down on myself and I see someone telling about their achievement or I don't know, I just see their content and I read maybe an excerpt of their writing and I'm like, I'm inspired. I'm just
Hmm.
inspired by others. So I think that's a great reason to be in social media.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have, I know I did, this expectation that you get on social media and you'll just start selling, right? You'll start selling books left and right. Now, look, there have been some people that have found a lot of success with selling on something like TikTok.
Yeah.
But it's possible that their book, their market is just on TikTok, or maybe they just happen to have some viral videos. But like you said, I think getting on social media with the expectation that I'm going to make some connections, I'm going to help people know who I am. It's giving me an opportunity to gain the skills to talk about my books and what I'm writing so that for other marketing efforts, I'm prepared for them. Like, I mean, you mentioned being nervous to get on video calls, and here you are, perfectly natural on on this call, right? You can't even tell that you ever had any troubles or nervousness around making video content because you're great, right? You might not have gained that if you hadn't tried social media, right? And learned to be comfortable with it, right? So,
It's
yeah,
it's all about growth, I think,
yes,
We're
absolutely.
growing, learning by trying new things, failing, succeeding, trying, failing, succeeding.
Yeah.
It's the never-ending cycle. Yeah, in my case, it's a bit unfortunate that I can't even look, I can't even send out like I'm sending out digital arcs now for the poetry collection. Yeah.
Mm,
And I know that especially with poetry, I know that people like to hold a physical copy. Yeah. I can't afford to send out paperbacks from here because I can't sometimes I can't really afford to get my own order copies
yep.
because I have to order and the logistics are absolutely crazy.
Mm,
Uh, I can't order from the States. That's just
right.
ridiculous because Amazon was actually they were a couple years ago they were actually I talked to customer support because I tried to order from the UK
Hmm,
website and they were like you can't. We're not
really?
going to ship to Bulgaria. We're like, well, cool. Like, so we're here in Europe. Yeah, you can't ship to Bulgaria for some reason, but you're telling me that I should go like with all the other marketplaces of Amazon in Europe. They actually
Yeah.
told me you need to buy from the US side. And I'm like, no, sorry, I'm not doing that. Yeah, so that was very complicated. Always getting my author copies, my proof copies.
Hmm.
Yeah, and still for the trilogy, I have like one author copy of each book, and I am like, I'm treasuring them. Like, God
Hmm.
forbid something happens to them because I only have one. So, whenever I watch videos of happy authors unboxing a box of
Yeah.
their author copies, which they got like, I don't know, like the next day after they ordered. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of jealousy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated, yeah, in my case. And I can't do book signings. I can't go to bookshops and, do any of those events, the writing retreats with fellow writers, or
Mm-hmm.
conferences or anything like that. But, well, it is what it is. It is what it is. Yeah, I don't know how much of an English speaking audience, let's say English reading audience. There's of course a lot of English speaking people. It doesn't
Right.
mean we will buy and read books in English. Yeah, that's a bit more complicated. But you know what? I am actually grateful that there is that there's Amazon. There's a lot of pros and cons to Amazon. We all know that. Yeah, I've been
Mm-hmm.
self-publishing for what, 3, 4 years. I know a lot. But in general, this is actually an amazing opportunity for someone like myself, first of all, to self-publish, and second, to actually make it possible when you're like literally on the other side of
Yeah.
the world. Yeah. And you can still do that. You can still do that. And no, you don't have to like, go and invest and print out a whole box of your books and then go to bookshops and ask someone to buy them. Yeah, there's print on demand, there's marketing opportunities, there everything. There are a lot of opportunities there. There might not all be easy, but they're there. There,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different paths to waiting to be discovered, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think every author needs to figure out what makes sense for them from
Yeah.
a logistics and marketing perspective. And, in-person events, I don't mind them, but they don't always work out for me because my schedule's kind of crazy. So I may be accessible location wise, but, I've got a lot of things going on. So I don't do in-person things as well. But, like you said, there's online opportunities that make accessibility not a problem across, the countries, across the oceans and everything. So it's awesome that I met you through TikTok, right? So that's a connection that was made through social media. I think there's a lot to be said there. But you ought to look into Book Vault. Have you looked into Book Vault by any chance for publishing or
I
not so
heard
much?
heard of them. So yeah,
It's worth
I
looking
tried.
into. They have
Yeah.
UK printing offices. I don't know
Mm.
if they ship to
Mhm.
Bulgaria. I don't know. But I actually buy my author copies through Book Vault, not through Amazon.
Oh,
So they have printing offices. They have printing locations in the US and UK, and I think they're expanding. But it's a little cheaper, and I think the quality is better. transparently. I like working with Book Vault, so
Need to check it
maybe worth
out.
looking into.
Definitely. I didn't even do Ingram, to be honest. I wanted to do Ingram's part also.
Ingram's okay. I don't
I
know if they have, I don't know where they
didn't do
print out of the US. You'd have to
I
look
think they
into it
put it
though.
in the US. Yeah, because I participated in an anthology a couple years ago. Yeah, and so I wanted to naturally get a copy, a physical
Hmm.
copy of
Of
the book.
course.
It's 1,000 pages. It's a monster. It's a
Oh,
thousand pages.
wow.
Yeah.
Big.
Oh my God, the price. I mean, it had to be shipped from the States. It had to
Yeah.
be shipped to Bulgaria. But not only that, I had to go to customs. I had to clear customs
Oh,
on a
right.
book that I co-authored. I had to clear customs. And seriously, it was such a hassle. I'm like, oh, this is unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
I'm never doing that again. So yeah, maybe that's why I didn't really look into Ingram. Plus, you need to have your own ISBNs, and that's
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, worth looking into. You never know. You might
definitely.
be
I'll
interested.
definitely check it out. Yeah.
But well, very good. This has been an amazing conversation. We're running a little short on time. Before we end here, though, I want you to let us know where can people find more information about you and your books and everything you're doing.
I think maybe the best way is to just go to my author website
Yeah.
because I have all the links to my books. More or less regularly I write either some articles, blog articles, or sometimes I
Cool.
publish my poems there on the blog, so you can even get a glimpse of that. Yeah, so all the links. There will be like an email to find me. I don't do a newsletter recently for about a year or so. That's one thing that I have kind of like abandoned also on the way. Maybe I'll get back to that. So yeah, I think the author website is just the best way to go. Otherwise, I'm active on Instagram, active on Twitter, I'm on TikTok. I'm pretty much everywhere, especially considering that my poetry book comes out soon. I'm literally shouting from the rooftops
Good. It's great.
every day about it.
When's
So
the
yeah.
published date for that? Do you know when it's coming out or
On
not
the
quite yet?
November 30, November
November 30th.
30
Oh,
the
it's like right
ebook.
around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually already released the paperback. The paperback is live again because I want to hold my own book on the release day, and I need those couple weeks
Yeah.
to order that from the German, at least from the German marketplace of Amazon. But it takes 2 weeks. I need to get it. So yeah, it's like spoiler.
I
The
understand that.
paperback is already live, which is good for early reviews though.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to like leave an early review, it's already live. You can go on Amazon or Goodreads and review it. And so yeah, so the paperback is out there, and then in a couple weeks, more or less, will be the big date. It's my first poetry collection. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. It's everything at once.
That's awesome. Well, very good. I appreciate you sharing your information. I'll make sure to put all of those links in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for everything you've shared. This has been great.
Thank you. That was such a great chat.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. She was such an inspiration, and hearing her story, it really aligned with my own. We have very similar writing styles, which I always appreciate. We approach writing in a very similar way, and I love this idea of the stories coming being drawn from her, particularly in a language that's not her first. So it's just an amazing process and very inspirational. But next week we'll be talking to Paul J. Bennett about going professional as an author. So Paul started writing 7 years ago, and after a couple of years, he had 5 or 6 books, and then he was able to go professional, and in the last 5 years has written another 30 books. So we talk about his process, his experience, the things he's learned, pros and cons of going professional, and just what that looks like from our perspective. It's very amazing to hear his story from a beginning perspective, from someone like myself who's still at the beginning phases. So if you'd like to join me, definitely do so next week. But I appreciate you listening today and look forward to next week. Have a good one.